Yes, I need a microphone. So welcome again. We'll go on with our program. Bernarda has some time off. Since she will take over a little bit later. We're going on now with our talk about the future of the Adriatic-Ionian region and the inspirational dialogue. And I'm really happy to present two members of the panel. The first one is Professor Dr. Lučka Bogataj, the most prominent Slovenian climatologist whose field of expertise is agricultural meteorology. She's a researcher and professor at the University of Ljubljana and play a crucial role as a member of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, where she worked on the special report on impacts, adaptation and vulnerability issues. The IPCC group and the former US Vice President Al Gore Jr. were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their efforts to build and disseminate more knowledge about human-induced climate change. Where it comes to dealing with the modern challenges of humanity, Mrs. Kajfež Bogataj is one of the most recognized and eloquent voices from our region. She was included in the group of women inspiring Europe in 2012, and since then she has never ceased to impress with her knowledge and positive energy. So welcome here in Portorož, Madam Kajfež Bogataj.
Yes, hello, thank you.
And the second member of the panel is Mr. Boštjan Videmšek, an award-winning and versatile Slovenian journalist and author with wide-ranging interests. He made his name as a war reporter for the most influential Slovenian daily Delo, but his articles soon found their way to the most prominent international media, including the New York Times, Le Figaro, Der Spiegel, The Guardian, Forbes, and the BBC. He published several award-winning books on the 21st century conflicts and on the modern exodus of refugees and migrants. In his recognizable style, he reviews the dying art of the long-form feature or reportage. In recent years, his journalistic focus has shifted to the effects of the climate change and the boom in green energy development around the globe. In his latest book, Plan B, by the way, Slovenia's Book of the Year 2020, Videmšek explores the crisis of climate change by highlighting ingenious, novel ways that people around the world have taken effective steps to address it. It's an optimistic look at a pessimistic subject, inspired by his friend, colleague and photographer Matjaž Krivic, another Slovenian award-winning reporter with a huge international reputation. Well, many see Videmšek's Plan B as an inspiration and a reference book for a long time in the future. So welcome to you also, Boštjan.
Thank you.
So we have 30 minutes to actually try to inspire the members of the ministerial panel and all the participants online. So let me start with the first question. You are inspiring others, but what or who is inspiring you, Madam Kajfež Bogataj?
Yeah, this is a tough question, actually.
That's why I asked you this.
Yeah, easy answer. First of all, I'm a professor at university, and it is a privilege to work with young people, and they are actually my inspiration, because when you work as a professor, you never grow old, and you are more open to accept changes. So this is number one inspiration. But the other is also, because I'm nature-oriented, is actually diversity. But not just diversity in nature, but also diversity in people. It's wonderful to meet different cultures. It's wonderful to learn from them, and it's wonderful to cooperate.
Boštjan, what or who is your inspiration?
Usually the people who have seen it all but didn't give up. Mostly my colleagues from the field of journalism. And my true inspiration was my twin brother. Well, I'm already becoming emotional. David Beriain, my best friend who was killed last week by poachers, Spanish journalist. He was a definition of a man, of a guy, of a human being who didn't take no for an answer. And somebody who was literally a freedom fighter, fighting for freedom, fighting for environment, fighting for peace as a journalist and as a writer and as a TV producer and director. He died for the most noble cause. For freedom.
That was in Africa last week, so we see that you're operating really really globally. It was a big tragedy, and I know how this really affected you, because, as you said, it was one of your dearest colleagues. But on the other hand, you're also a fighter. You're an optimist, and you wrote an optimistic book on a really pessimistic issue. So, what is so optimistic about it for those who haven't yet read it? Because we really recommend all the people from the region to read it.
I would say that it's a kind of manual. It offers solutions. I mean, after all these years of covering conflicts, refugee issues, and my capacity for human tragedy is non-existent anymore. So I have decided, as a journalist, as a human being, to give something back. I don't know. I now believe in something called constructive journalism, and I'm trying really to find solutions with all the experience and knowledge. And going around with Matjaž, a super optimist, a naive optimist, was...
Who is naive, you or Matjaž?
Him.
Okay.
He's naive, but it's naivety. It's a virus.
Yeah.
So and it was a good virus because it spread to me, and I was, in kind of rabbit hole, in a dark hole, and it was nearly impossible to come out of it because of all what I've seen. But going around and looking for solutions and find new solutions, and looking people who are already there and fighting the climate crisis with their own example and with their own resources, was super inspiring. And they don't allow you to say it's impossible, because they show you that it's possible, even in the direst environment, even at the edge of the possibilities. And what is really striking is that these people are risking their own personal safety in the name of solidarity, in the name of community, and this really is inspiring. And this is the source of my personal optimism, let's call it, and the optimism which is, in my opinion, present in the book. It really offers the solutions, and it's an answer to the questions which usually don't have clear answers. And what I found out after the book was published and with its success is that people were really hungry somehow and especially in the times of pandemics, when everything is really dark and there is a collective and an individual anxiety out there, the book offered some, light future.
Yeah, Plan B is a very simple title which can easily be remembered. It's of course it was written in Slovenian, but now it has been published in English. Probably it would be a good idea to publish it in all languages of the EUSR region. Perhaps I hand it to the Albanian
Inshallah.
presidency. Madam Kajfež Bogataj, well, of course you're a global researcher, but if you look our region, the EUSR region, where do you see, let's say, positive, inspiring cases, really positive examples which work that you could share with us in order to even make our optimism a little bit bolder?
Yeah, it is regarding the latest development, but actually it's a process. If you want to have a good solution, you have to work on a larger time scale. Maybe I will start with education, actually, because I think, at least Slovenia, my experience, I quite broad there, we have excellent primary and secondary education in terms of sustainable development, in terms of actually green solutions. So if I look at the younger generation, this is fantastic, how much they know, and also they are quite, I would say, advanced thinkers, because even now through a pandemic we can see a lot of strange behavior in the older generation, like they don't believe in virus, they don't want to get vaccinated, all sorts of crazy views, but young generation, they are very rational, so they are much better educated, and I think this is in many countries also in this area true. So this is a good example.
So education first.
First, then I would say some green infrastructure projects, which are also quite important, because if we want to make a sustainable green future, green infrastructure is quite important. Some good examples also in tourism, because I think in this area more and more we can see more or less mass tourism. So people did understand that you can actually make a profitable tourist destination, not by, I don't know, adding more and more people, but adding more quality to this time. So this is something I find quite advanced in Europe in general, but especially in the Mediterranean area. But of course, there are a lot of challenges where we expect also some good examples. We totally failed as a region on mobility. We are still using cars, so it's not much change there. We have still problems with fossil energy, although in this part of the world we could use much more renewable. For instance, sun is something that is at home
Even
here.
today, outside it's very sunny, not
so
here in the
all
hall, of
this
course. but-
transmission now could work on solar energy, but unfortunately not yet. So yes, we are sort of halfway. Okay, I'm an optimist as well, so I can see the glass half full.
Okay. Boštjan, coming back to your book, it's also a global book, but could you name some good cases from the region in particular?
Absolutely, and it's an answer to what Lučka has showed and explained now. It's a perfect case. I call it my own southern island. It's the island of Tilos in Greece. And it's a proof, an absolute proof that future could be different. And it's a perfect mixture of development of the technology and the change of social paradigm. So technology as such is an empty shell. Technology which is kind of helped by the social change, it's something that could work. I don't believe in technology as such. I mean, nuclear energy is the best case or the worst case of why not to believe in it. But Tilos was completely abandoned, was a demographical
Nightmare,
disaster.
yeah.
And it's also in like 25 years ago. And then a young doctor came to the island and started everything from grassroots, from point zero. And he developed a very strong social tissue, a very strong social structure at first. And it was the first island to have the same-sex marriage. It was the first island in Greece to prohibit the hunting. And it was the first island to recover all the trails from the old Greece era, and it was the first Mediterranean island, the island in the Mediterranean which have become self-sustainable. Only, of course, due to the renewable energy. They have built the hybrid photovoltaic, solar and wind power plant. And it's really successful. Now it works for more than 2 years, and it provides 130% of all energy needed on the island. So whatever they produce more than they need, they put it in a grid, and they also get the money for it. So they were never shy to say, for us, this is a business model, and this is an added value, because it's not only, how to say, kind of science fiction or just a little chapter. For them, it's everything. It's overwhelming.
It's not a business, it's a survival model.
First, a survival, but then also a business model, because now they're opening different companies at the island. It's going to become the first island to be fully electrified. Also in mobility, they're trying to become self-sustainable also in the terms of producing their own food. And but I made the first contact with the island, to put it like that, when I was working still covering the refugee crisis in Greece. And it was the island which was not on the maps of migrant routes, because it's too small and it has no direct connections to Athens or Piraeus. So it was actually a place where people landed by accident, and the people who came to the island were even in much worse stress and psychophysical conditions than people who came to Samos, Lesbos, and other islands. And people in Tilos Island, they just accepted them as their brothers, their sisters, their mothers, their sons, you know, and it was beautiful to see how literally off-grid they were taking care of people. And this is what I see as a common future, not only in the Mediterranean region. And this is the example I would like to share everywhere and with everybody.
Which is interesting because Minister Logar and also Mayor Markovic, they spoke about how the European civilization started in the region. Well, it started again. In a way, on the island of Tilos. So, I mean, that shows the potential of the region we have. Madam Kajfež Bogataj, you're very experienced, and of course, you have dealt throughout your career also with politicians, with policy making, which is of course a very, very complicated thing. Researchers research, and they of course they tell us about their experience. But of course, politicians must act. Well, we have a new declaration summing up the Slovenian presidency of the USR region. We have a lot of ideas, but what would you actually suggest the ministers and policymakers in the countries of the region how to proceed in the time to come to actually address this crisis we're in for so many years? Not the pandemic crisis, but the climate crisis, the social crisis, of course also the political crisis, which is a consequence of the situation we're in.
Yeah, we live in a quite complicated times, that's for sure.
And it's getting more and more complicated.
Yeah, unfortunately that is also true, but maybe this COVID situation was a sort of a source of lessons that we can learn, which it was a wasted time, but not probably entirely. Well, my advice to any community, not just political one, is of course innovations. Innovations are what will save us, but when we talk about technological innovations, already Boštjan mentioned technology is not everything. Yes, but there is a room for engineers. I always say, as an example, as long as I remember, our family had a car. When I was a very small girl, we had a car that used 7 liters of petrol per 100 kilometers. So many decades later, I still have a car that uses exactly the same amount. So where are engineers?
But the car is bigger.
Okay, of course. But you know, the point is that we got nowhere. And there's a huge room for technology change. So engineers, it's your call. But it's not just about technological innovation. We need new institutions. This is something that is, in my view, extremely important, because even on the level of the United Nations, these institutions are old. They were made for different problems in different times.
So old, like the old cars. They use the same fuel, but they're all the same.
Yeah, but they are not something that I would like to bring myself or ourselves into the future. So new institutions, not just on the global level, but actually sometimes I ask myself, being a university professor, did university follow the change in time? Because today my students can get all information on telephone. I don't need to describe him, but he desperately needs a professor to tell him what is a fake news, what is actually useful, and what is just garbage. So, but we did not adapt, not to mention some parliaments, you know, I always vote, and sometimes my party wins, sometimes not. But whenever I look at the parliament, what they are discussing, I said, what am I doing here? I mean, something is very wrong. And I get the same information from all over the world. It's not just Europe like that. So new institutions, new infrastructure. This is something at this point extremely important, because there's a lot of money floating around in recovery funds. So let's make infrastructure green. Just to give you an idea what I'm talking about, in average city like Ljubljana, people make 50 kilometers per day just to put children into the school, visit grandparents or parents, and go to buy bread.
And it's not such a big city.
Yeah. So 50 kilometers, 5 hours, why? We can do it better. Okay, that is also the most important innovation. So I call upon philosophers, I call upon communicators, whatever, social, soft science. We have to invent new lifestyle, because what happened at that island is different values. It is reconsidering what is important, because for politicians, growth of GDP is everything. So if GDP grows, we are doing fine. Not true. Not anymore. GDP is old. It is from 30s.
Old car.
Last millennia. So there are new measures of success. And if we do all these innovative things, supporting young people, because they would do it easier and faster, yeah, the future will be there. Otherwise, probably next forums will not talk about future. We just talk about how nice it was in the past.
Well, GDP could stay, but we should change gross to green.
Yeah, there are so many initiatives in Europe going around. Since Sarkozy in France, so it's now 13 years. Everything is there, but it has to be adopted. So this switch.
So engineers, new institutions, let's say change of values and promotion of values to survive. Your suggestions, Boštjan, to the policymakers.
Agenda fully based in future, not in the past. I mean, and future belongs to young people, those who will be, for sure, the core victims of climate crisis. So address the victims or the possible victims in advance, give them the floor, put them on board, give them the chance to lead now. I don't need somebody to tell me what will happen, who's like, I don't know, 65 and hasn't experienced the direct consequence of climate change. We need people who have seen it, who have experienced it. And this is a mover, and I always, or a driving force, I always try to paraphrase or quote a great man, Daniel Kahneman. He says that we are just not wired, evolutionary, we are not wired to deal with climate crisis, because it's not, in big part of the world, it's still not yet a direct hit in your face. It's not a truck coming in front of you to put you down. That's why we don't react quick enough, but we don't have time. We have to react quick enough. So to make this, how to say, huge step forward, a gigantic step forward, we need a smooth and fast transition from reflex to reflection. And I don't see this potential in politics, because politics more and more is basing, or it's basing their work on or the ideology or strategy on the reptile part of our brains, which is a reflex. We need reflection, and this belongs to young people.
Okay, but let me stay with this, because it's actually what Mr. Logar said at the press conference, that for example Slovenia would actually try our best to really focus on young people who are, you said, the biggest victims of the climate crisis, but also the biggest victims of the COVID crisis, because you know, school closings and of course the effects on their work. For example, young people without the possibility of doing work as students, as pupils, and as young people in particular. So Slovenia will focus on that, but how to do this throughout the region, and of course not only when it comes to the consequences of the COVID-19 crisis. What changes should policymakers do in order to enable, let's say, more power to young people who are extremely educated, as you said, who understand the present situation probably better than everybody else. So how to quickly implement the need of this change, Boštjan?
We definitely need an open platform with no borders, where young, educated people who have the leader potential can work together and build a future, build a common future. And this is where I see also the Lučka's idea about the new institutions. We don't need this very 20th century orientated political system. And somehow you can see this in green forums in Germany, where you have this huge following of. I'm not here being partisan, but just stating the facts. How the Green Party is being successful by having really young people on board, politically, socially activated, because they believe that there is some future, there is some hope, and they have this collective state of mind and. Just putting it more direct, I think that there is no green future without really open society and the improvement of our democracies. And what have been witnessing during the pandemics or last 14-15 months is an erosion of democratic process and also the closing of the open societies. And this is really concerning. And I think people who are closing the open societies and people who are directly endangering the democracy are not those who will put us out of the climate crisis, which is for me the biggest challenge humanity will ever face, and that's why I call it the crucial front line of humanity.
Which brings me back, or which reminds me on a very good book by a fellow colleague, Roger de Weck. He's from Switzerland, a thinker, former CEO of the Swiss public national radio and television, who wrote a book on how democracy needs to adapt, and especially he shares your opinion, Dr. Kajfež Bogataj, about, let's say, institutional changes within parliaments or within the parliamentary system, with let's say more involvement of climate crisis issues and more young people. But Madam Kajfež Bogataj, in the beginning you stressed your affection for young people you're dealing with as professor. Well, some would say, well, of course they're young, of course it's their world, because they will sooner or later need to rule it. But are they ready to take over? I mean, young people, because they're still so young, one would say.
Well, it's not like we will change the planet overnight and put all white men over 60 who are ruling the world now, white men over 60, I repeat, if you didn't hear quite correctly, and replace them by 20 years old. It's a combination, of course. It's about listening more than about cooperation, because sometimes I, as a scientist, feel like young people. We keep talking, we keep giving solutions or warnings, but nobody listens. So we don't need such a big change. But of course, we can try with the quotas. Why not? There were women quota, I remember, in Scandinavia 10, 20 years ago. It works now. So why shouldn't be, I don't know, 10% of our deputies younger than 25 or 20 or whatever?
Only 10%?
Okay. I still have to be advocate for women as well, because we did not even made it in that field.
Yeah.
So I told you, I really admire diversity. Not just about generation, it's about gender as well. And what I really hate now, and for the last couple of years, is this slim variation of the state. Everything has to be just, everything is redundant, what is not in some people's view important, but redundancy is exactly what is there in nature. In nature, nothing is redundant. And it is a pool when we can get new ideas, even if the people maybe have not a significant role right now. So we have to listen to each other, and if not other model, I suggest quotas. Why not?
Okay, it's a very...
Elections are coming next year. Or when, so.
Not only in Slovenia. Well, it's really good to hear really specific suggestions from your side. We still have 5 minutes. Boštjan, in the end, when you look on our region, and I know that you're always planning something, well, what would be your next book about, especially regarding our region?
I don't think it's going to be about our region. It's going to be global, and it's definitely about saving the endangered species, but not necessarily in the sense of saving animals. It's saving communities, it's saving islands, it's also saving some endangered people, individuals, men and women. It's saving the tribes, it's saving the civilization. So if we're talking about the civilization, I think Mediterranean should be much more present in our collective, not memory, but identity. We more or less ignore it as a common space, but do not forget that Syria, Libya, Israel, Palestine, of course, in these days more and more warring, are also part of this region, and it's a common space, and it's a common responsibility for what we are seeing and what we are experiencing. I think that my work, no matter that I have refocused to climate change and the consequences of it, will be still, and it's interconnected, really connected to the plight of refugees and migrants, and climate change-driven changes in the region, also in Sahel, will change this area. And are already changing it, especially in some Greek islands, to the place of huge human tragedy. And we have to address it all together, because it's, as I say, it's a common space, and it's common responsibility.
Yep. As we heard, no man is an island, and no island is an island, and no region is an island. We were living all together, so all our problems are our own common problems. In the end, Madam Kajfež, Bogataj, what are your plans for the future? Because I know you have always some plans.
Yeah, it's also about the writing a book, or at least some materials on what I'm dealing is not just climate change. It's about the limits of this planet, because planet does not grow, and we want to grow in material sense. We want everything to grow, but actually what we have left is non-material growth. We can grow in culture, we can grow in sports, we can grow in relationships, art, why not? So I will try to combine something with that, and think about some new maybe economic model that would actually account for nature, account how much nature is worth.
Which is also part of our optimism when we look forward, because you will write a book, you'll write a book, we will have plenty of read about, and of course don't forget the books you have already made, especially Plan B, as I said, the book of the year in Slovenia should be a manual for the next year, also within the EUSA region. So, Madam Kajfež, Bogataj and Boštjan Videmšek, thank you so much for your inspirational talk. I think we've used our 30 minutes very well, and we will now check with the ministerial roundtable if there was already an inspiration for the members. So, thank you very much. Take care and have a good year to come, and perhaps see you next year on the next EU SARE forum in Albania.
Okay, thank you for your questions, and good luck for the forum.
Thank you. So, our next point will be a ministerial roundtable, which will start shortly. It will be, of course, about the new growth through smart and green recovery, regional research and innovation, networking and clustering for blue growth, sustainable seafood and food production and consumption, improved sea basin governance, maritime safety, interconnected sustainable energy market, good environmental and ecological status, halting biodiversity loss and ecosystem services degradation, reducing waste flows, diversifying tourism products and services. With all these objectives, how can EU SARE contribute to a new EU growth model through smart and green recovery? So we'll have representatives of several countries on the ministerial level. Thank you very much again to Madam Kajfež, Bogataj and Mr. Videmšek. We will have a, let's say, a smooth and quick change. And I, here in Portorož, I'm happy to invite on stage the representative